Good morning, dear audience. How are you? Welcome to the second International Conference on Business and Management, ICBM 2019. Among all those events that we have in this conference, today we are going to have one of the special events, which is the PhD colloquium and the paper producing workshop. So for today's session, I am with you. I am Zahid Hussain Mohammad Aldin, a senior lecturer of Bragg Business School. To conduct this session, I would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Mahbub Rahman, Professor and Dean of Bragg Business School, to come on the stage and to start the session, please, sir.
Good morning, Assalamu alaikum. And it's nice to see so many people here early in the morning, beating Dhaka traffic, other than those who are actually staying in the hotel. Thank you so much, Mr. Zahid. Oh, okay, I just called this. Thank you so much, Mr. Zahid, for the introduction. I'm delighted to be chairing this session, the PhD colloquium. I think this will be an outstanding opportunity for young scholars and individuals who are already doctoral students or who are considering even going for a PhD, which we know and we reaffirm is the best preparation for a career in academia. We're very honored to have two outstanding speakers today, and I'll be introducing them one by one, and I'll ask them to go ahead and come to the stage. We begin with Professor Zhongru Li. Professor Zhongru Li is a professor of marketing at the National Chongqing University in Taiwan. And he has a very, very interesting background as well as a very relevant for us in Bangladesh, I would say, focus in research, which is agricultural sustainability. He has been a Fulbright scholar in the United States in 2006, a couple of years ago. And both of us received our doctoral training in the United States. So we were talking about how wonderful the graduate student schedule is. I'm seeing that we have a couple of empty chairs, and usually graduate students, doctoral students, they become badgers. And what that means is they stay up all night and then they sleep all morning. So maybe next time we'll have our PhD colloquium in the afternoon. So a very well-respected scholar, and we're delighted to have Professor Zhongru Li. Please. Co-speaking will be I will say our very own Dr. Mohammed Mamoon Habib. He's really the lifeline of this conference. And Dr. Habib is my colleague. He's associate professor at Bragg Business School. He too has been a visiting scholar at the University of Texas at Arlington in USA. And prior to that, he was associate professor at the Asia Graduate School of Business at UNITAR International University in Malaysia. He's editor-in-chief of International Journal of Supply Chain Management, and he has more than 17 years experience in the field of teaching as well as in training, workshops, consultancy, and research. The other half I will talk about maybe sometime in our session. So Dr. Habib, I only gave you half of an introduction, so but let's go ahead and join Dr. Zhongru Li on the stage. Now, a session chair can be of two kinds. I can be really mean and talk about time, but I've understood from Dr. Li that he would like for this to be a very interactive session, his talk. He has, I think, a limited number of slides as well. And so I think it would be good for all of you to consider participating early on in his talk. So we can begin with Dr. Li. What's that? Do you want to speak first? The schedule that I have been given lists Dr. Lee as the first speaker, but if you'd like, if you're comfortable, either way. Huh? Okay, co-speaker. Yeah, well, I came up with that term. All right, if you'd like to start, go ahead and start.
Hand mic, hand mic, hand mic. স্টার্ট করুক ওটা স্যার ওটা নাই একটা কানেকশন রয়েছে তাহলে হ্যান্ড মাইকটা স্যারকে দিই Okay, welcome to our PhD colloquium and paper producing workshop. First of all, thank you so much your attendance and special thanks to our session chair. And basically, before going to start, I think Professor Lee, we need their introduction, right? Our participants' introduction. So, what do you want from them?
If possible, you can introduce yourself, what type of research you are interested, or what's your career plan, something like that. So we know more about you, then I think we will have a more interaction later on.
So, you can start from there, please. You just mention your name and your research area as well as your affiliation. There's no microphone.
Good morning. My name is Safiai. My research area is merger and acquisition, especially from legal perspective.
Assalamualaikum and very good morning to all the participants and also the presenter. My name is Muhammad Syed Saud from UUM Malaysia. So my area of research is small and medium enterprise or small and medium industry, particularly in Malaysia. Thank you.
Hello, good morning everybody. My name is Mahrin Mamun. I'm an assistant professor at Bright Business School. I would like to go through the opportunities in working in the research fields of advertising, especially consumer behavior. And I also have a degree route where it's actually entrepreneurial education. So I have two distinctive research interests, whichever works out.
Hello to everyone. I am Mariam Rahman. I am from Sweden, the University of Gävle, and I will present something that you are experts in, and it is about microfinances in rich developed countries.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sajida Zohra Thakur. I'm faculty, School of Law, Brack University. My research area is labor law. I'm more interested to do research on different sectors in industrial law in Bangladesh. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Disha Dashno from Brighton School. I'm just came to here to learn about some PhD preparation, how to get the PhD preparation from here. That's it. Thank you.
Are you MBA or BBA?
MBA student. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, very good morning. My name is Ernie Suzila Kasim. I'm from University of Technology Mara, Malaysia, and my research areas are related to information technology.
Assalamualaikum. I'm Amy Normalina Omar from UiTM also. My area is about halal supply chain, focusing on poultry. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and very good morning. I'm Nafisa Muhammad Hassan from University Technology Mara, Malaysia. My research area is on health behavior and management, also on special need kids.
Assalamualaikum, peace be upon us all. My name is Yahiza Yahya. I'm from University of Technology Mara, UiTM, Malaysia. My research area is social commerce in Islamic perspective.
Good morning, everybody. I am coming from Islamic University, Kustia, Bangladesh, Professor Dr. Aurobindo Shaha, Dean Faculty of Business Administration, my paper ID, and battle vine cultivation in Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum and good morning to you all. I'm Sabina Chaudhuri and my research area is focused on ERP solutions in mid to large organizations. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Muhammad Samiruddin. I did my MBA from Bracken University, and probably I would be the probable student of PhD in future. That's why I am here today. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much. Professor Lee, do you want to share something about their biography? You understand already they're multidisciplinary people here.
Yes, I think it's a good combination. We have researchers in SME, consumer behavior, advertisement, how to start a business in advanced countries, and some researchers in law. And one question, how to get PhD? Maybe we can start from there to discuss something. And also the Indonesia technology, health behavior in kids, social services, and organizations. I think we have a lot of that we can discuss. So maybe I suggest start from how to get PhD.
This is a very basic question, that a PhD proposal. When you're going to start any PhD, you have to submit the proposal. And now this is a question is that, what is a PhD proposal? You know that when we deal the PhD student, we notice when they submit the PhD proposal, even they could understand what they are going to do. Even in my experience, when I supervise a PhD student, when they submit the first PhD proposal, when they are going to defense, the proposal is totally different. Topics change, ideology change, lots of modification. So this is one of our suggestions, that when you prepare the PhD proposal, you just think that it's the initial draft. And there's lots of possibility that it could be at least 50 to 70% will be changed. Even the title will be changed. It could happen that even before the PhD defense, your title could be changed last night before the final submission. So it means that whatever you are going to submit as a proposal, this is not the ultimate goal. It could be revised, replenished with your supervisor. And I always mention, I you also discussed with the Professor Lee about this issue, that PhD basically depends on supervisor. And if you give me the statistics, I would say that 70% depends on the supervisor, 30% depends on the student. Because it's a motivation, long-term journey. 3 years officially, but sometimes 4 years, 5 years. If you do the PhD in the United States of America, definitely it will take the 4 to 5 years. So this is very difficult. So the question is that how you spend this time. So in the meantime, your ideology will be changed, lots of brainstorming will be there. Basically, I just mentioned some few ideas that when you construct the proposal, that first of all you have to think that what I can do. You have to ask yourself. We call it research question. we call it research question, means you have to ask yourself. And if you get any answer from there, it is your own opinion, you call it hypothesis. The answer of the question is your hypothesis. So you have to try to answer. Maybe your answer could be right, or maybe it could be wrong. That is the research. So first of all, the research question will be there. You have to highlight that why you are doing these topics for your PhD research. So at a glance, you could say you have to express the significance of your title, significance of your study. You definitely have to mention that what is the originality of your work, how you could understand the originality. So you have to check the previous works in that area. We are choosing the one topics, and you have to check the earlier research in the topics. From there, try to find out the originality. I just mentioned the one issue that when last night we did a long chat, Professor Lee and me, and that that when you review the other paper, you have to check the conclusion. Try to find out, is there any further studies? Try to find out, is there any limitation? Try to find out, is there any kind of suggestion, recommendation? That could be a starting point of your PhD proposal. So you have to try to find out whether they have any kind of findings, so that based on that you can do the further PhD research or not. Definitely you need the literature review based on that. And literature review, I think we will discuss a lot, and Professor Lee will add many points in there, how we could enhance our literature review, how you can produce a literature review, productive literature review. And definitely, if you're planning to get the fund, you have to need some of the specialty in your proposal so that the supervisor will get the interest, because basically the fund will depend on supervisor recommendation. So you have to try to attract the supervisor. Definitely any kind of hot issue, if you do, any kind of social impact research, if you do, you'll get the fund very easily. That if you do the research on the National Health Service, any kind of health issues, very human related. If you do any kind of research on the environment issues, if you do any kind of research on the, suppose, directly population related, there is a possibility you'll get the fund. So what I said, that this is the more or less we have to think that how we can attract our supervisor as well as the university to get the fund. So I think this is the time, Professor Lee, I think you can add some more points about your experience.
I think I can add some my experiments. How to write a good PhD proposal. I think the key point is that you need to find a good advisor first. And you can Google, or from this conference, you should be able to find a good advisor, which is defined, he fits you. Okay, he may not be the best one, but at least you like the way he talk, you like the way he do the research, and talk to him. And then he will guide you. Okay, based on your background, then he can give you a very good topic. I think that's a step that you should do. People always ask why a student who got a PhD, this title will be with him forever, for his whole life, called a PhD. The main reason is that in these 3 or 4 years study, you will change the way you think. Your logical reasoning process will be more reasonable. Okay? Whenever some question comes to you, you can figure it out and then give a good and neat answers. That's benefits of the PhD. And second point that I want to mention is that talk to a right person to be your future advisor, and then find a hot topic. For example, now in the whole world, IoT is a hot topic, sustainability is a hot topic, and green food, smart food. Everywhere you can find a hot topic through Google. Easy find it. And then you can use this new term. Talk to your future advisor. Are you interested in this topic? Something like that. It will be a good start to communicate with your future advisor. Then make him knows you. Then he will guide you and to write these good proposals. And in some university, I know in northern European countries or in American top ranking universities, they will host a special workshop to have all the applicants, students come to American. They will pay you the air ticket, and the workshop that lasts for 2 or 3 days. They want to observe you, what kind of person you are, the way that you think, the way you behave, what kind of food that you like, what's your religion, everything. After the workshop, they will evaluate which student fits their program best. So it's a win-win situation, okay? Advisor chooses student, and student also choose advisor. But for the universities who run their workshop, usually they have lots of funding. Funding from a big company or funding from a government. They are focusing on some specific area, so they want to find the right person to do the research in the area. That's my opinion, okay? So for my experiments, I study in USA, Texas A&M University. When I land in the USA, I go to each professor's research room. I knock the door and I introduce myself and I ask him, what can I do for your research from my contribution? Usually they say, I don't know, but what you can do? Then I tell him that I have nothing, but what I have is time and the eager to learn. So one of the professors says that, okay, you are in. So actually I start from zero. I know nothing about American. I just go there and then find a professor who like the way that I talk, that I start to follow him. And he guides me to the semiconductor research problems. Actually, I don't know what is a semiconductor when I was in USA. So I do a lot of papers search and read. And then I talk to the senior students, what kind of tool that I need to know. So from there, it opens my life, okay? That's my experiment to share with you.
Basically, this is the outline of his dissertation. And we would say that you have to follow the university at own format, but it's more or less the same contains. And in fact, you notice that our workshop, that in fact the PhD colloquium and paper producing workshop. So we'll discuss all points and subsection in our later discussion. Okay, so that means we'll come back again, this outline, end of the session, so that whether we can focus all area or not. This is the various chapter, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, chapter 5, chapter 6. So what I said that in our whole discussion will be based on this one, and finally we'll also come up here again, and we have to come up with a summary that whether we discuss all, clarify the all points or not. I think this is the time that how you will get the idea for the PhD, for proposal. You need the idea at first, right? I think it's better we can start with Professor Lee.
I think, yeah, just like what the slide says shows, Google, okay? But I think what you can do before you Google anything, you should read the articles in the newspaper or in some magazines. Get some ideas about what the big companies or what the government are doing. It's a good start for you. Government policy always will last for a few years. So before you graduate, the policy is still there, so it's good to feed your research. Even the government change, the policy change, but that's fine because everyone knows there was a policy before, okay? So that's my suggestion. Start from something that you think it might be interesting and good for your country, good for your society, then you can start from there.
You know, Professor already mentioned one issue is that society, means you have to think of the society contribution. And basically, when you finish the PhD, this question will come up, that what is the contribution or novelties of your PhD research. So you have to highlight that how you could add the values to the society. So what Professor Lee said, we have to think at first whether we can add some values by this research towards the society. Then we can search more papers. And Google is one of the search engine. You can use this one. It's very popular. And basically, if we have the now option in our country, we have good internet. So it is very easy to get the internet. So you can apply. And then there is the other option as well. You know that you have to go from some of the like research website, research professional website, professional group. You are familiar with the Facebook, right? Anybody here who don't have the Facebook? Okay. So that means everybody is spending time on Facebook. But we'd like to request you can spend more time on this kind of site so that you can get some research idea from there. You'll get some of the research co-researcher. You can get some of the professors. You can communicate with them. There's very popular something is that Google Scholar is one of the very popular, and there is the Academic Review, ResearchGate. So that is one of the maybe one of the criteria that you can try to search from there.
Okay, my point is that once you Google or do this research, in the end, you might interest in one topic, whatever it is, maybe called sustainability. And some professor, the way he writes, the way he do research, you really like it. Then start to Google him. Who is his advisor? Where he graduated? And who are his students? And who are they? Where are they? Are there professors in some university? Then in the end, you will know his networking. Because when you do the research in PhD, it's so important. You need to become his family members, because someday you can use his family networking to help you when you want to do the promotion or you want to do something in the university. For example, you want to host one conference where you can find the international speakers, then their family members can help you. That's a shortcut. Not just think about the way how to get a PhD, you need to think in the long term after you graduate. Then if you can figure out the whole process from now, before you enter the PhD, until the end of the life, you will find the beauty of a PhD.
You know that suppose if you join the conference, what is the main reason to organize the international conference? Basically, a conference is the place where you can do the more networking. And we emphasize our PhD scholars. We emphasize our the master's level students to join more international conference so that they can get the professor, get the keynote speaker, discuss with them. Maybe that would be another path, how you can get the new idea from there. Direct interaction. Unfortunately, in our country, as we don't have that kind of academic conference too much, we could not get that privilege. But if you have a chance to go overseas for the international conference, you can get them more effective supervisor, effective human resource, whether you can discuss your idea. Maybe from there you can revise your idea and come up with something from there. That is the way of networking in the conference. Basically, you remember the professor mentioned earlier that we have to search the papers and how we could search the paper. Definitely, we have to search the paper from the online database. So we have to use the online database, and there are lots of online database. And this is my experience with my PhD scholar. It is better to use only one online database. If you use 2 or 3 online database, there is the possibility of the duplicacy of this one. So maybe you can choose only one on database, and from there, so you target like consumer behavior. So you can search the papers on consumer behavior. You can search the papers. So what is your target point? You can assign, and based on that, you can search from there. There is another possibility of that open access, and you know that when you search in the Google, that sometimes you could download, sometimes you could not download. So most of the cases, if you could not download, you'll be the little bit annoyed. You're not satisfied. I couldn't download that one. So I think you already understood that why you couldn't download. That means this is the traditional access you have to purchase. And we don't have that kind of mentality. We have ability, but we don't have that kind of mentality to purchase. So we can suggest one thing is that you can think the open access initially. There's lots of open access nowadays. So you can search from there. Easily you can search initial level when you're going to start the PhD or the RD level of the PhD. But there's another question will come up, the quality of the open access. This is later on you can think. But this is one of the avenue for you to search the papers from the open access.
I think after the break, I can show you some link which are to shows you which paper is written or downloaded in which city in the whole world. It will surprise you. When you publish one paper somewhere in a specific journal that said that, then the editor-in-chief, he will know, okay, who is interested in this paper. And so if you know that link is good for your research, you will know more about what the academic research papers are doing. That's a point that I want to add.
There is another issue will be there, like when you submit the proposal, you have to add the references. And this is very important in that sense. Initially, you like to see that from where you are collecting the papers, from where you are downloading the papers. So it happens, I noticed that many master's degree thesis students or PhD scholars, that they lost their references. Because it's a long journey, 3-4 years journey. So we always suggest our PhD scholar that you have to store your all materials. And how you could store this one? There is many option you have, and you are familiar with this one that this is not working. You can see that Dropbox is a very modern technique. We can use a Dropbox, so anywhere you can use this one, or Google Drive, that will be another option, or maybe the email would be there. And we prefer the soft copy storing rather than hard copy, because there is nowadays a moving world, so you can travel anywhere, maybe you can lost it. But if you have the soft copy version, it's good for you. And definitely when you search the papers, we always recommend that you have to produce the folder base and the subfolder based on the date. Based on the date. Suppose January 20, 2018, you are searching the 5 papers. So you can save this 5 papers in one folder. So you can recall that on the day you search it. So the next, again you are searching maybe after a few weeks, again the new date will come up the next folder. So it is easy to understand that sequence. And what I said that when you take something from there, you have to notify. And you know that sticky note system, you can apply that one in the PDF or Microsoft Word, you can use the review section so that you can mark it. It's easy to recognize the next, after 1 year, when you're going to submit the proposal, then you have to come back again. But in the meantime, you already lost it. Then it's another difficult issue.
My point is that store where? Store in your brain. You need to memorize it. If you have a chance, talk to the professor in MIT, you ask them, what is the question? Okay, for example, the question that you give him, how they give you answer? He will say, oh, the answer to your question is in what journal, which volume, and the page number is where, and which paragraph. This is the way that they answer your question. So they have a bigger brains to memorize all the key informations. And actually, that's what you have to learn Of course, store somewhere in the hard copy or soft copy are important, but if we really think that, oh, this definition, this article, or this argument is really good, try to memorize it, put it in your brain. Someday when you talk to someone, the guy who talked to you or discuss with you, he will get shocked because you can answer the questions immediately in a very scientific way. Otherwise, people will be mumbo jumbo here and there and gives you no response. Okay, this is my experiment. Okay, to share with you.
You remember that when we started this one, the Professor Lee mentioned that you have to search the paper and you have to review the paper. The question is that how you'll review the paper. Definitely you have to read the whole paper, but sometimes it's very difficult to understand if you are initial researcher. You are planning to the research on the supply, halal supply chain, as a very new for you. So you have to definitely read the paper. So how you could start it? This is one of the way you can think that you can read the abstract at first. Whether it is relevant to you topics or not, you can think. If you think that it's relevant to your topic, then go to the conclusion and check it carefully. What are their findings? Is there any kind of further study they have notified? Any kind of limitation they notified? Any kind of recommendation they notified? Their notification means their recommendation, their further study, there any kind of limitation. It could be the starting point of your research. But you have to start from there. So we suggest that you have to give them more concentration on the conclusion. And then definitely if you think there is a more relevant to you topic, then go to the inside and read more and more. And try to find out is there any kind of specialty there. And then you have to continue this process for the other paper as well.
Let me give one example. One of my students come to me, he asked me what kind of problems that he can put it in his thesis or dissertation. Then I asked, what's your background? And then he told me that he liked the travel. So I asked him, why not you Google what kind of data related to travel in inbound or outbound Taiwan. Okay, that's where I come from. And he told me that the city where I come from is called Taichung, middle of Taiwan. And based on his study, he found that more and more visitors from Korea to Taiwan. But usually they just make a stop in Taipei. Taipei is the capital in north, so they don't come down to middle. And they will stay 1 or 2 nights in Taipei and then fly back to Korea. So we think that that's a problem, how to attract Korean people come down to Taichung, middle of Taiwan. So we talked to the travel association chairman, because he is also my student. So I said, this is a new observation. Why not you talk to our local government? Try to have a direct flight from Korea to Taichung. And after 1 year, we really did it. Now we have an airplane from Korea, direct flight to my city, Taichung. So now more Korean people come to Taichung, but you know what's the result? They will fly to Taichung and they take the high-speed rail train directly to Taipei. They don't spend any money in my city. So we are quite upset. So the question comes from how we can attract the Korean people, fly to my city and stay 1 night, eat food, and spend time in Taichung. Then our business should be able to grow up. So the idea will come from how to make our business or sightseeing spots more attractive. And that problem will be very, how to say that, very concrete, not just somewhere in the air. That's a way that I find research topics for my students. And at the same time, of course, the student need to search the Google and see what international data shows, what trend in international travel. For example, halal food is not popular in Taiwan, so we should put more effort. We should have a halal hotel, halal restaurant, halal here, halal there, just like your city. So if you travel to Taiwan at this moment, it's not so easy for you because not much food is prepared for you under the halal regulations. But from that students' study, we can explore so many new ideas. At least we can do this kind of research at least, I think, 10 years. That's one of the example, okay? So start from your lifestyle and see what problem occurred in your society. And now you are in a very good university break, or you are very close to the black university. I think it's good for you. So that's my opinion.
Okay, so this is the initial discussion about that, how you can get the research idea to write the research proposal. Now we are going to the next one, that research publication. Basically, you know that some of them, they're doing the job. And I noticed this when I got this experience with my PhD scholar. They're working in the corporate for a long time. Now they are tied up. They're planning for the PhD. This is the one level of the PhD scholars. Another PhD scholars means after doing the undergrad and masters, they couldn't think the PhD. Now they're planning that it is better to get the PhD. There is a break. Though they involved in the academics, now they're planning for the PhD. And another one, what is the regular, the continuous PhD. So there is a few gap. And now come to the question that publishing is one of the issues, especially when you're planning for to get the fund during the PhD level. So especially our subcontinent culture is that when you apply for somewhere, we are planning to get the fund. But this is the one of the adding the values if you have any publication. At least you can show that we are trying to work on that. That's based on that you would like to submit the proposal. And now come to the question that how you could get the topics to write the initial publication. It is not the part of the during the PhD initial level. You know, it's very simple that even you are doing the job, for the job you try to observe the phenomena, what is happening, regular activities. Try to find out something from there. And you know, you have the theory, what you learned in the classroom. Now you're observing the practical. Whether there is any gap, any challenge. Based on that, you can write something. That could be one of the publication, initial publication. Or if you are the university's faculty members, lecturer, senior lecturer, you can try to find out the student papers, especially their semester project. Whether, you know, we can get some of the good students, they have some intellectual ability, apply them, use them properly. Because that is the way, that is what we call it the win-win situation. You will supervise them, they write the paper, so you can apply their intellectual ability. So that could be one kind of a starting point of publication before the PhD and initial of the PhD.
I think whenever you do anything, you need to have a strategy, okay? So, okay, I already write a paper, and I want to submit it. Where you should submit? That's a key question, okay? My suggestion is that try the hard one, okay? The journal which has a high impact. Then your paper might be rejected, but it's the strategy. What does it mean? The paper will be rejected, but sometimes they will give you very good remark or give you advice. And this is your weakness. This is a place that you need to improve it. So you just follow what they say and improve the paper. Then you will know, okay, level 1 journal, I have no chance. But why not I try level 2? If I fail again, at least I get some good remarks. So I improve the paper again. So different levels, in the end, you try a couple times, you will get a feeling, oh, this is a very high impact journals. This is second level, third level, fourth level, something like that. So in your PhD study, you will learn something. No one can get it from your brain or from your experiments. And I think that's good. Okay, you will learn something from what's called publication. Second, easy way to get published your paper is to do a cross-country comparison. You design something, and you can use same measure, same questionnaire, and collect data, maybe from your neighbor countries or neighbor cities. Okay, for example, you can collect data in north, middle, south of Bangladesh or cross country. Okay, then I think the international journals like this type of paper very much, because the same technology, they want to know what difference is in different cultures. That's my suggestion. Okay, thank you.
So that could be the various type of publication. We don't want to discuss in details because more or less we have an idea, just to give the one wrap up on that. Basically, this is a conference paper. And then you know the process of the conference because as you are joining this conference, so you have an idea. And this is how you can determine the quality of the conference. And this is one of the sample of the conference. This is the journal. You understand, all the professor mentioned, that if you submit the paper in the good quality journal, there's a possibility paper will be rejected. But what I noticed that most of the initial author, where maybe once a time we also the same ideology that if you reject the paper, we are demotivated. But I always inspire my student. If your paper is rejected, means there is the first step ahead to publish the paper. You can get the more idea, modification. You are getting the more critical, logical expression from the reviewer. You can apply. You cannot get them anybody in the world, any author or any PhD holder, their paper is not rejected. So it is very normal as a part of the process. And I always emphasize our PhD scholars and those interested for the PhD. It is the process means that when your paper is rejected, they are providing some reviewer comment. You can apply that one and you can enrich your paper and go for the next one. Why not? But you have to need that kind of motivation. But I noticed many of them, they are only demotivated. They are not willing to publish the paper. And there is some craziness, like to publish the paper in the Scopus Index Journal and ISA Index Journal, Web of Science Index Journal. It's good, no problem. But my question is that you have to work on that. At first, it's a long journey. It's a long journey. So you have to spend some time to write the paper at first. Then make a plan to publish the paper with those kind of journal.
In general, students will do the following ways. First, they will write a conference paper. After that, then they will try to write journal papers. But I always suggest that you should revise, revise. You should start from a journal paper. And when you have a good results, you can get some of the idea from your paper and put it becomes your conference paper. Why? Because in the conference, if you propose your idea, then what would happen? Some smart guy in the audience, he will get the idea from you, and then he go home and publish good papers. So you have no chance. So in an academic world, speed is so important. If you want to compete with the whole world, okay? If you just want to compete locally, then it's no issue. But think about that. This world is connected by internet. Everyone will know what you are doing, what type of research you are doing. So it's better that you propose some idea in the conference, and then next month, you already have some journal papers somewhere in the world. Then people will have a very good impression about you. Then all the good chances will come to you. Invite you to be the editor board or invite you to be the editor-in-chief. Otherwise, how come people will recognize you are so good or not? That's my suggestion, okay?
That as the editor-in-chief or editor board member, editor, they checked the similarity index of your paper or publication. So when you plan to write the paper, you have to ensure this one that you did the paraphrasing. So otherwise, similarity index is the high, then the question come up. The rate of similarity index is depend on the country, depend on the university, but there is some standard one that at 20% to 40%. Usually conference, similarity index, ICBM conference, we are applying the 35% similarity index until 35% we are accepting the paper. But in the journal, when we are in the Scopus in the journal, we prefer the 20% similarity index. But in the PhD dissertation, defense, when you check it, we also do some obligation that it should not be the similarity index more than 20%. So we use a translating software or authenticate software to find out that one. So I'd like to request that when you submit the paper or if you're planning to write the PhD proposal, make sure that it should be properly paraphrased. And you can do the just copy and paste from other places, because during the checking, you'll get all part from where you do the copy and paste. This is the editorial book and book chapter. Basically, editorial book is the concept of the few chapters. So you can also make a plan. Basically, I prefer that when you have the few publication, then when we can think of to write the book chapter. That is in terms of the quality, it depends on you. But if you could publish the book and book chapter, that means you'll be alive in the society for a long time, and it is our ultimate goal that to do more contribution for the society. So that could be another bench for you, that editorial book chapter. This is finally sole author book. You are familiar with this one. So basically, this is a publication. Like we like to talk about the publication because you are familiar, and our third day of conference, we have another session, Meet the Editor. So we prefer that if you have any question about the publication related, you can keep it. You can ask on the Saturday, our session, Meet the Editors. Okay, so basically this is a publication part, and it is the most important part for today. And you already understand that when you're talking about the PhD proposal, and we are talking about the research, and the publication is one of the issue. So how you can construct the publication. So this is the more or less our outline. And you remember today when we started our PhD colloquium, we mentioned the outline of the PhD dissertation. So when you finish this part, you notice that we already covered the most of the part. So it's almost correlated. So first of all, there will be the title. So it is the most challenging job, how we can create the title. So we use the term that it should be the scientific academic language. So you have to know the academic writing so that you can produce that academic language. I noticed that the last 5 to 10 years, there's a new style of the title, that question in the title, means research question is coming in the title. And I noticed this one very frequently nowadays. It could be the new bench. And I'd like to add a few points, I think, after the discussion of the Professor Lee.
It's okay, go back, previous slides. Yeah, here. Okay, which chapter is most important? Okay, actually, each chapter is important, but you need to find one focus. For example, some dissertation spend lots of time in literature review. In Finland, I have one PhD student co-chaired with their advisor. The student study all the papers related in how to start up a business for the past 100 years. So he read around 2,000 papers. And the conclusion is so sweet. If we want to have a good business to start up a company, there are 4 stages. That's a conclusion, that's all. But in order to make that 4 conclusion, you know that he needs to study or read so many papers. So all his PhD is only focused on a literature review. So if you just focus on one of the chapter, actually if it's good enough, then you can get your degree. For the engineer background, I think they will study more in chapter 4, model development or theory development. Or they will do some experiments to show you this this approach is better than the past, something like that. But in management, usually you don't do the comparison because of the case here and the case another place may not be the same. So you will describe what the difference is. You will not say which one is better, which one is not better. So the way that you express will be different. But Model 4 is, Chapter 4 is good for engineering. And for management, I think it's good is focus on the Chapter 5. What kind of data that you collect and how you collect it. You collect all from business owner or from all company managers or just students. So different data quality shows your paper quality is good or not. So for management dissertation, I strongly suggest Chapter 5. It's very, very important. So you need to think what kind of resources you have. Do you have a good human connection in order to collect good data? Or you have good stories about the problems that you want to solve? You need to figure it out first. Then you will find, okay, where you should put more efforts in your dissertation. And for the Western dissertation, you always can find that they will just collect the papers that you published in your PhD degree period of time. For example, if you publish 3 papers, then just put 3 together and make a story, then you can graduate. In the Western universities, usually you can find that kind of the way to generate a dissertation. But in Asia, always we go through this way. Okay, that's differences, but it's the way that you can enjoy it. The structure is the same, but content is totally different.
Okay, so you know that usually when you choose a title, I recommend that you can check the various conference proceedings title, especially the selected renowned conferences. You can check. IEEE conference is one of the standard conference. You can check the title. Or Scopus Index Journal or Web of Science Index Journal, you can check their title of different journal paper. So you can get the idea and how you can produce the title. And I suggest you that when you start write the anything, title should not start in the initial level. You should end of this, finish the everything, then you have to come up to think about the title again. And if you have a co-author, then you can do the brainstorming. Then how you can come up with the title. And I just shared the one experience with you. I produced one book on research methodology that is published in 2014 from Cambridge School Publishing. And I remember that when you choose the title, initially title, and we published the book after 2 years. And then I have 2 co-authors. They are my ex-student and plus ex-colleague. So I proposed them that this is my few recommendation, like 3 title you can choose, and you can come up with the discussion, you can do the brainstorming. And when they came back, I noticed that their title is better than what I suggested. So that is the way that you have to give the chance to co-authors to come up. And finally, when you come up with the title, finally, all title has been changed. That is the come up the outcomes from the brainstorming with the co-authors. So I suggest that you should stick on the title initially, go ahead and come to a decision. Recently, what I said that I noticed that some of the title, they're using a case study. You know that if you mention any country name or organization name or state name in the title of the paper, the scope has been reduced. And you are producing the narrow scope of research because somebody, they'll not check it. So suppose you are doing the public transportation facilities and challenges suppose in the Johor Bahru state. When you mention the Johor Bahru, that means you have specified the Malaysian country, right? So those people, they're searching the paper from the European country, they say, oh, it's an Asian country, Malaysia, no need to check. So that means you are giving the path. Some people, they are not using paper as a reference. So we prefer this one that is better. You can discuss your case study, no problem inside. But initially, no need to mention clearly in the title about your country name and organization name. Because what I said that in that case, there is a possibility that only few audiences, they'll read your paper and they'll use your paper as a reference. And again, I remind you that we use one term, the scientific language. Academic scientific language, you have to use it so that it will, the more sound will be like that, the scientific title.
My suggestion for the dissertation title is don't use fancy words. You should use a traditional way to describe what's the content of your dissertation, because your dissertation will be stored in the library and put it over 100 years. But think about that. After 50 years later, will someone come to a library search for your dissertation? I don't think so, unless he is your student. Only your student will go to a library and looking for 50 years ago, my advisor's advisor, what is writing. So for the title of your dissertation, I will suggest you, I give you an example. Talk about MIS, okay? Management Information System. It's a very common term. Don't use ERP. Maybe in your dissertation you talk about ERP, but for your dissertation you can use a traditional way to describe it. Okay, that's my suggestion. But for the journal paper, it should be fashion. Okay, you should use ERP because it's a hot issue in the whole world. Once a company big enough, they will apply ERP. So you might study how to make ERP efficiency, how to implement ERP, or how to store ERP, etc. So you can write a journal paper in a fashion way, but for dissertation, you should be more conservative because your committee member usually don't like the fashion way. They will say, okay, our university has a long history. We should conservative, follow what the important guys says. We should have a good tradition, something like that. That's my experiments. Okay, thank you.
Professor, do you need a break now, or you can take a few more?
Depends on you. I think we're scheduled at 10:45 for the break.
Okay, so go to the next one. Basically now we are talking about the paper producing. So, but our discussion, you already understand that both of you.
Are these titles of a paper or a dissertation?
This is a paper. It's a paper. Paper. Yeah. And you know that what I said, there is a co-relationship because we have to think of the both, and this is the relevant to the both. I think it's better to discuss about the abstract at the last because we should construct the abstract after the introduction, literature review, methodology, and other parts. So we'll come back in the abstract at the last of the discussion after all chapters. Introduction. Basically, this is the rational general background. You have to highlight the rationality of your publication. And you know that there is one significant factor is that when you think of the dissertation or PhD, you can use the interaction, you can use a few pages, no problem. The question, number of pages is not the matter. Matter is that if you think the publication, suppose conference paper, there is some limitation, 5 to 6 pages. Suppose journal paper, there is some limitation. Suppose they mention that there is, suppose 10,000 words or something like that. Or maybe somebody they mentioned that clearly that not more than 10 pages. So limitation is there. So we have to check at first their limitation. Which one do you want to produce? And then you have to make a plan. But basically you have to highlight these a few issues like objectives. What is your objectives? You must focus this one. No need to highlight, you know, when you write the dissertation, you can mention clearly the headline, the objectives. But when you write the paper, no need to mention the objective. You just write the one paragraph on that. But again, you have to check the number of pages of the conference paper or journal paper. So you must focus the objective. You must focus that outline, means how you could construct this paper, so that any reader, they can check, they can understand that construction of the paper, outline of your paper. You know that when you write the paper, we focus this on that, no need to focus that hypothesis, because when you focus the hypothesis, you must prove the hypothesis. Means hypothesis testing is required. So if you like to think about you like to highlight the hypothesis, then definitely you have to come to hypothesis testing. And in that case, you have to use the software. Either you can use the structure, equation modeling, SAM technique. You can use the different type of the MOS, Listral or PLS, something like that, or SPSS if you want to use. So you have to come to a decision that whether you like to use the hypothesis testing including in the paper or not. Definitely PhD level, you must show the hypothesis. Without the hypothesis, you cannot come up with any findings, so you can use that one. So introduction, when you come to the introduction, you can mention the objectives, outline, and significance of your study. You have to focus. You have to find out your significance of the study. And in that case, you can use your previous publications. I mean, you're going to have to find in that area, is there any previous publication, and from there you have to come to there. Literature review. It is the most important in that sense. You understand it's a review of it's a literature review. So the related review of the related works. You have to find out the works. I just shared the one specialty of the literature review. If we produce in that way literature review, that is the best one. So you just think of the pyramid, and you just rotate the pyramid. So now this is you can divide the two line, so the 3 segment. So you understand that you already rotated the pyramid. So top side in the bottom. So in the top side is the widespread. We call it a theory. So you have to start from the theory. Then come to the more narrow, related review literature, relevant to your research works. And finally, previous studies. Finally, the previous studies. I just give an example. So suppose you like to make a plan, academic supply chain management. So first of all, you have to think supply chain management. So theory at first. What is supply chain management? Definition of supply chain management. And then you have to come to the more specific. We are working the academic supply chain, means education supply chain, means service industry. So come to the second layer. Second layer, you can mention about the service in the supply chain management. So you can find out, is there any kind of service industry hospital, maybe the banking, maybe tourism. So that means you are trying to highlight the service industry supply chain management. And the last one, previous study, more specific. You can find out the previous papers, those relevant to the academic supply chain management. So you understand that from there you have to come to your own thinking. You are planning to do the research on the academic supply chain management. So try to find, you got the previous 2 papers. One paper they do suppose survey on academic supply chain management based on the stakeholders. Another one is a model development but based on case study, not the in general model. So from there you have to come up that you target, you like to produce the generalist concept, you like to produce any model, conceptual model, empirical model, but you could not ignore the previous studies. You have to use it as a reference. If you construct the literature in that way, you understand that any readers, any audiences, when they read the literature, they understand that how you are producing your paper, how you are coming to your research topics. So they give the clear idea about your literature review. Unfortunately, I would say that it's not very easy job, it's a very difficult job, but if you do the construct that way, that you can give the clear idea about your research topics.
If your research topic is old, okay, and your topic is new, then the story will be totally different. If your research topic is not so modern, up to date, what you can do is that in the literature review, at least you should have the history of that term or the history of the area. And second is a definition of that term or what does it mean. You need to give a definition. And number 3, you need to explain what activity should cover under that definition. Number 4, you need to find some application or papers to prove that this kind of research already done in some area or in some regions. That's the paper focus if it's not so modern or up to date. But if your research topic is so new, for example, the first paper talking about the robot, how to generate that kind of paper. Or your topic is so new, talking about online shopping, okay, a couple, maybe 10 years ago, how to generate that kind of paper. How can you have the literature review? There is no one really write that kind of paper before. So what you have to do is think what's the related terms that people will use. For example, CRM, Customer Relationship Management, is a high issue right now or in all over the world. But think about 10 years ago, what kind of literature that you can get? Nowhere. So you need to think how the people do business. So you will think about the buying and selling relationship. So if you Google the buying or selling relationships, you can find it's an old topic. So many papers are already done before. So you can collect those hot points in those papers and put it in your paper to become your literature. Because usually students will ask this kind of question. My topic is so new because it's related to my society or my life or my industry, especially for EMBA students, they will have this argument. So how can I find the literature? And I think this is the way that you can get some literature from a library.
Methodology. Basically, methodology is the core of the research. You have to highlight what type of methodology you're using, what type of methods you're using. You have to define your research methodology part. You have to define your research, whether it's a basic research or applied research, whether quality research or quantity research, or whether you can apply the exploratory, descriptive, or causal research. Any way you have to define it. So this kind of research methods you're using so that anybody can understand. And basically you have to mention or define that what type of data you are using. This is a primary data or secondary data. You know that if you use the primary data is survey based, the next question comes how you are conducting the survey. You have to focus that one. If you use the secondary data, then the question comes up from where you are collecting the secondary data. From where, that is from conference, journal paper, conference paper, or book, chapter books, and how you are collecting this one. Which online database you are using, you have to mention this one. So that is the starting of the methodology. And then if you like to highlight the hypothesis, you can also share the hypothesis here. And I mentioned one issue is that there is a few correlation in the research, like your research question. Your research question, then is a hypothesis, and then your objectives. Research question, and then your hypothesis will come up from there, and then you have to come to the your objectives. All are correlated. So now come to the point that which one do you want to highlight? If the hypothesis, I already mentioned, you have to test the hypothesis. So that's why most of the cases, we try to focus on the objectives so that you don't need to focus on hypothesis testing. And then if there is hypothesis testing, then you have to mention whether you can use the one-tail test or two-tail test. You have to mention null hypothesis, alternate hypothesis. You have to mention that one. And then if you have a model, then in the model, and if you have variables, you have to highlight the variables. Operationalization of the variables you have to mention.
In order to get a PhD, methodology is very important. But the question is that which methodology you should learn? That's a key question. So some courses in economics department that you should take. It's very painful because in the process it will torture you, to play with the data and the modeling, okay? But that's what you have to go through, okay? That's very important. Because in economics, they study so many different methodologies. And usually, someday you will use it because you will become a teacher in the university for a long time. So different students will give you different questions. So you will figure out, oh, this question should be able to be solved by this methodology. Another question should use different methodologies. But how can you know which methodology that you should study? The way you study is in your PhD study period of time. For my experiments, when I study my PhD in Texas A&M in USA, my advisor taught me very much. He will guide me, you should do this. Then after 1 week, I come back to him, I said, the way you say is not correct, because I proved that this is not the way that we should go. And my teacher says that, don't believe what I say. You need to have your own thinking. So from that point, I know I don't believe what he say. Okay, so I study all the mathematical methodologies. Some I found interesting, some are not. But after I graduate, it helped me a lot, because now I can easily recognize which approach or which methodology fit which problems. So this first I want to mention is the importance of the economics theory. Second, if now you have two roads to make a decision in your life. After you get a PhD, you want to involve a lot in society or not? If yes, I believe that it's hard for you to get lots of data, because you can only get the data from a company or from a government. And government usually don't have a database. They will just say that, yeah, this is our policy, we should do this or that. Maybe we can give you some data, but the data is limited. So the approach, the methodology that you should know in your PhD period of time should be sweet, small, and precise methodologies, which means that just a limited of data, then they can help you to calculate something. That's one category of the methodologies. And another way is that if you want to think much in the society, you just want to play with the data, so somehow you will link to some international organization or NGO. They should have big data for you, for your future. So at that period of time, when you are in a PhD, what you have to do is to play with big tools. For example, SPSS or SAP, some software like that, or R software now is also popular. They can help you to play with the big data, so you can easily find a good solution. But when you are a PhD student, how can you know which category of the approach that you should know? Should be the software, SPSS, like that, or the small and the neat algorithm, which one you should know? So it depends on the life that you want to have after you graduate. Okay, that's my suggestion. Otherwise, there are so many approaches, methodologies in the whole world that you need to learn or know. It's no way, right? But in the end, after you graduate, you should focus on one methodology that you are the king or the queen in that area. So when people use that approach, you can point out this is correct or this is wrong or how to improve it. Then people will say, oh, you are really the very important people in this area. Then they will invite you to be a member of their international association. They will invite you to attend some conference and invite you to be the editorial board of some journal. So you will become a big star in the area. Chief editor for this journal for a few years. And actually this journal is hosted by the California State University. You can see in the left corner in the university, what I try to do is to convince researchers. You don't need to submit to a SSCI or SCI group of journals. Why not let's have a public and a free area for everyone to publish your papers? And this is one of the example. The whole system is supported by IIMA. In the right side, you can see that the name of the American Association related to information management. So you will see they will put all the papers
online for free to free download. So if you like, you just download it. And then what will happen? This is the magic. Okay, they can see the real time, which paper is downloaded in which is the city of the world. Very amazing, right? You can see now in the American, in Asia, now it's our daytime. So you can see lots of researchers are doing research. But see, how about American? They are lazy, right? No, it's their nighttime, so they are sleeping. So when we are at the nighttime, you can see American becomes very energetic. Oh, many downloads over there. So from here, we can do lots of analysis, right? Which paper is a hot topic in the whole world. So if someday some related paper comes to the journal, we will accept it. So this is the way how make the journals get more and more popular, and also attract more researchers come to this journal. Okay, you can see even the journal paper and also which city is downloading, right? And in the bottom you can see we already put 331 papers online, and total downloads are 71,000. Almost 32,000 downloads. So this is how the impacts of this journal will come out. So if you want, you can have this link. I already linked to a professor. You can get it from there, from him. So it's amazing, right? That's the power of the internet in research. So this is another angle to see what the researchers are doing in the whole world. Okay? This is the first tool that I want to share with you. Second, every year I host one big conference. First year is in my city, Taichung. Second year is in Thailand, in Chiang Mai City. Third year is in China, Beijing. And this year is the fourth year. It will be in Finland, in Oulu. Oulu is a city of innovation. So it has lots of stories about Oulu in innovation in technology. For example, the city is not big in Oulu. Population is also low, but they are good at thinking. Okay, they always think something very deep, very deep. So we like the way their lifestyle. So we go there to have this conference this year in August. If you have time, you want to join, and then welcome, okay? Any paper is related, which is related to agriculture innovation, welcome, okay? That's the second thing that I want to share with you. So we go all over the world to know good professors who do good researches, and then we can do something together in a bigger scale. And this is this is where I come from. It's Taichung. So in Taiwan, you can see everywhere we have tea. So this is how tea grows in Taiwan. So just to give you some idea where I come from, the shape of Taiwan looks like a sweet potato. Okay, and I come from middle of Taiwan, around here. So next time, if you have any chance, come to Taiwan. Okay, give me a call. I will show you around to drink with tea. How is this? Good? Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, let's back to the slices. So how to return to the PowerPoint?
Before tea break, we were in the research methodology part. Basically here we have to mention about the sample size. So if you do the survey, then this is very important. If you are not doing the survey, it's just based on this second data, there's no need to mention. Here, basically, you have to mention sampling procedures, so that the probability sampling, non-probability sampling. Is my personal observation. The PhD scholars, even during the defense, if anybody asks this question, defense committee member, about this one, they're doing the mistake here. So I'd like to request that you should give some more concentration on that. We don't want to discuss in details. So at this stage, you have to understand your population. There's a known and unknown population. Then you have to think about the sample size. This is a sample size determination technique. Basically, there are 3 techniques for sample size determination. One is the table. This one, Tarunyawan table, produced by Japanese. And then there is another 2 table. But this is very popular, the Tarunyawan table. And there is another technique of the sample size determination, the formula, and the reference from previous study. Basically, for PhD level, we prefer the third one, the reference from previous studies. So that's why you have to collect the number of respondents and you have to focus based on the previous references. Professor.
It's okay. Back to slides. If you are doing research in B2C, B2C means a business to customers. And then this table, the numbers, yeah, this is good, okay? But if you are doing research in B2B, means a business to business. For example, who is a good supplier to your company? The problem like this is B2B, not B2C, then it may not fit. Because your suppliers are limited and you have your own linkage. So how to have a good sample? My experiments that EMBA program is a good pool. Okay, you just collect data from EMBA students. Usually they are not the company owner, then they will be the company managers. So they have a good representative to show the data quality is good. So this is my experiments to share with you.
These are various types of sample procedures. You have to decide at first which one you have to apply. We already mentioned the primary data, secondary data. So if you use the survey, then you have to make sure one issue is that why you have to take in the 400 plus respondent. We are assuming that PhD level, as already Professor mentioned, that if you take the number of respondents, then you have to use the table. According to the table, 400 plus respondents, so we assume the standard one for the PhD level. Now, come to the model and theory development. Basically, engineering research, if you do the engineering research, then it's very important that you have to develop the model. And even if you do the business research, if you do the model design, then it's a unique research. And you know that there is a very popular term, is a basic research, unique research. So that means if when you develop the new model, you understand this is a unique research. And your demand in the market due to the model development is very high. You know that when you do the PhD, after the PhD, your recognition will come up based on your PhD. And I met with the Professor Lee in 2014 in the one conference in the Chiang Mai. So I was the keynote speaker and he was one of the keynote speaker. And now why they invited me? They invited me due to my PhD findings. Because I developed the model for academic supply chain management. And last night we also discussed about this one, my model. So that is something. If you do the model that is designed in your PhD level, your recognition will come up based on this model. So this is one of the main of the key point for the PhD level. And if you have a model design, there is the next question will come up that how you are designing the model. So you have to use theoretical frameworks. Is there any previous models you have? Not you have, the other authors they have. You have to highlight the theoretical frameworks, the previous work. And the new model is the conceptual model, conceptual framework. So it will come up on the theoretical framework. So you have to show the previous works, previous authors' works. You remember the literature review I mentioned, that previous study. It is very important. It is the one kind of basement of your own model development. So that means you cannot ignore the previous models. You have to show those models as a theoretical framework.
So in your dissertation or in your paper, you have a new model. How to prove it should work well. So first, what you have to do is talk to the economics or mathematics or the computer science professors. Tell them that this is your finding. But in theory, I don't know it's workable or not. Usually, they will ask you some basic and simple questions. If you can pass their exams or their talk or their questions, then you will pass it. Easy, okay? But you need to have good friends in those areas. Second, you need to write a conference paper as soon as possible. At the same time, write down your dissertation, because just as I say, publish it in a conference paper and journal paper as soon as possible to make the whole world know that there is something new from Bangladesh. Then people will get admired and then question, how come this new theory or new finding from this area? And they will invite you to some international conference to have a chance to express your idea to them. Okay, because I saw lots of good stories like this. Okay, in the beginning, in America, they always think about big data or huge data. But in Asia, usually you just have limited data. So how to find a good solution? So in Asia, we develop some sweet and nice and small technology and methodologies. And so they will get surprised. Oh, this is the way how the Asia people are doing. So they will admire your achievement. This is my suggestion. Okay.
Now, data analysis, basically, if you do the survey, that means you have to do the data analysis. So you like to get the findings from there. Now, this data analysis part, you can apply as you will do the PhD. We assume that 2022 onward. So definitely you have to think about the structural equation modeling. So there is a very new innovation in the statistical analysis in the business arena. So if you do the PhD in the business arena, you must use the structural equation modeling. You know that I did my PhD in 2009. I finished my PhD. I used the structural equation modeling. I remember the time my professor they mentioned that you have to do the PhD not for now. You are doing the PhD for next 10 years, 20 years. So your demand in the market will be high if you apply the structural equation modeling. I'm really grateful that the supervisor gave the good advice. So at least you have to think in structural equation modeling. There are a few software you can apply. You can apply the MOS or Listral or PLS, which one is fit for you. But in order to apply the structural equation modeling, you need the initial model. Otherwise, you cannot apply. Or if you use the other statistical tools like SPSS, you can apply if you don't have the model, initial model. But in order to apply the structural equation model, you need the initial model. And we call it model input. From there, you have to get the model output. There are two types of analysis. One is descriptive analysis and inferential analysis. Descriptive analysis means the frequency-based, like percentage-based. It's very easy. But you have to go to the inferential analysis during the PhD level, based on the hypothesis. So if you have a hypothesis, you must go for the inferential analysis. And based on that, you have to think that which one you have to fit, like Pearson correlation or regression or other something.
The question for this area is that if you have many and so different types of data, what you can deal with it. That's what we call the big data. So in big data area, what you have to know is what's your goal? What do you want to know from this data? And then try to find the good results from the data that you collected. Then if you got the good results based on your questions or your queries, then you can publish very good paper. That's what people do in the big data area. For example, in my case, I get data from a hospital because my student is a chairman of in Central Taiwan biggest hospital. I say, what kind of data you have? He said, I have different types of data. Since you are my teacher, all free for you. So I get data, okay, and I'm quite surprised because so many details. And I'm not good at the medical hospital area, so what I can do? So I think, okay, what's the relationship between the patient and the sickness? I try to find the linkage. In the end, I come out becomes the health care package. We designed a good health checking package compared to other hospitals. How much money the citizen has to pay to check your body is health or not. At the same time, we consider the efficiency of the patient, of the citizen's time. So for other hospitals, if you go there, it will take 4 hours. But if you go to this hospital, only 2 hours, they will do just a simple check-in. And then if you pass it, means your health is no problem. If you have problems, then they will call you and ask you to come back to do a deeper check. And we think that's a way for future life. It's no way ask you to come to a hospital for the whole day, do nothing, just waiting for your all the testing, all the checking, right? So this is one of the example. We got the data, we come back to the hospital and talk to them, what's the problem that you have, and maybe we can figure it out and formulate a good question and find good results for them. So that's for the big data. If it's small data, usually software can help you, just like SPSS or R software or some heuristic algorithms should be able to help you. But usually in the journal editor, we will ask you why you use this methodology. Okay, why you use SPSS instead of R software, something like that. So sometimes you need to study some, you need to know some differences between the different methodologies, because people usually like to question like this. Think about one thing. If you are a reviewer of the paper for some journal, you will use the time, you are full of energy to read someone's paper, or when you are tired, you fall asleep before 10 o'clock, after 10 minutes, you will fall asleep. Then you will use that not so energetic time to review other people's paper. Let me tell you, they will use the time, it's not energetic for the reviewers to review other people's work. So at that time, they always say what? This is not good paper. This is not good. That is not good. Actually, what you did is right. It's good, but they are tired. Okay, in the whole day they are doing their own research. Now it's time to go to bed, and 10 more minutes they will go to bed. So it's time to open your paper, and then look at a few pages, give some comments. It's time to go to bed. So you need to save their time. Okay, no matter what you did, just write down the points, what the key issues that you are trying to discuss, and why you use this methodology, and how you collect the data. Just write it quick, small, and precise, and then the reviewer will be happy. That's my experiments. Okay.
You know, there is another question will come up in the data analysis part, like reliability and validity. So you have to explain that reliability and validity. You can explain in terms of statistical analysis, you can show that one. Usually in the defense, we are asking this question. Defense committees are already mentioned, professor mentioned about this one, that why you are using this one, why not that one? So you have to know that why you are using this one. So you have to know the other data analysis technique. Okay, so now we came in the conclusion. I mentioned earlier is that this is very important in that sense that any conclusion in the publication or any conclusion in the PhD research, it means that that is the starting of the another research. And we call it exploratory research. Explore the new idea, and then how we could explore the new idea. We can explore the new idea from the conclusion. So you have to check the conclusion carefully. You have to check what is their findings, what is the recommendation, is there any limitation they mention, if they provide any kind of recommendation for the industry application, like implication of the model. If you have a model, then you have definitely have the recommendation how the organization they can apply the model. And you remember we already talked about this issue that contribution novelties. And Recently I joined one PhD defense in Malaysia ICBM. So that is a Skype defense. So I was in Bangladesh, Dhaka. That supervisor, she's my good friend. So she invited me as one of the member. And what I noticed that defense complete, good defense, no doubt. At least one question should ask, as I'm in the end. So they give the privilege to ask the question. I asked this only one question. And what is the contribution of your research? But unfortunately, she didn't reply. She said what she did, means findings, we did this one. Even her supervisor, she's tried to put you can come to the your contribution. Even the other students, they're using the novelties and something, but she could not reply that one. It is a very common problem. And I would say this is a basic problem. So I suggest that before the defense or before doing this research, you have to think about what is the contribution of your PhD research. You have to ask yourself, and you have to keep it in your mind that why you are doing the PhD. So you have some contribution to the society, that's why you are doing the PhD, so that you can reply in that way. Here another one part is the limitation. You have to give them more concentration, the limitation. If you do the exploratory research, so you have to add your own limitation, and your limitation is the starting point of the prospective researcher. So you have to highlight your own limitation. But make sure that what I said, that you have to maintain this one, that findings you have to express, you have to mention the implication of your model for the study and the limitation, and as well as the contribution of your research. And there is one thing you have to remember, that you have to use that academic language rather than a statistical language in the conclusion. Usually conclusion should be the universal for others audiences. So make sure that it is the academic language, there are no statistical language. Suppose if you say that the two-tailed test and 0.01 significant level, this kind of word could be applicable for those who have the idea of the statistics, but general people, they don't have idea. So when you write the conclusion, you have to remember that there will be no statistical language, it should be fully the academic language. Okay, so now we are in the references, bibliography. There are lots of references, style, and we prefer that you have to use the university style, which university doing the PhD. Check their reference style, you have to use that one. And if you use write the paper, conference paper, journal paper, check their template, you have to use this one, okay? You know that I just shared the one experience with you, that suppose when you work on the conference proceedings of ICBM, we notice most of the authors, they don't have the idea about the template. What is the meaning of the template? Template means that you have to use that one. And what they're doing, according to the template, they open another Microsoft file, and they're creating the new file. If you create the new file, that means you already changed the margin, setup, changing. Everything changed. So you have to check whether it's a double column or single column, or whether there's a spacing, you have to check. So you have to use a template. So no need to change anything. Just copy and paste in the template, you will get everything. So in the reference, there is a few reference style, but APA and number reference style is very popular, mostly used. There is others like Harvard and Vancouver as well. So you can apply, no problem. More or less, you have to make sure one thing is that your contents must be there, and there's not too much difference. But make sure that your author's name will be there, year should be there, and if it's what type of publication you have to mention, is a journal or conference, or maybe the book chapter, editorial book, or maybe book. And then definitely page to page, means which page to which page you are coming. So this is a basic reference style you have to mention. And definitely, you know that basically the reviewers, when they review the paper, they give the more concentration on the references. You reference. From where you are collecting the paper, from where you are collecting your information. When you notice that you are collecting the lots of references, that means your reference very strong, means you work hard. So it's one kind of indication for the reviewers about your writing style and other something.
Actually, from the reference, from a reference, we can judge the quality of the paper, garbage in, garbage out. And so if a reference are good, which means the material should be good, then we will spend more time to see how this paper
is generated. Okay, so I encourage you, you should look at the good papers, okay, and put it in your mind and think what he tried to tell people from each good paper. That's my opinion.
In the reference, we strongly discourage to use the website address. We prefer that it's a book chapter, it's a book journal. Even if you use the conference references, strong conference references, if they have the ISBN number or something, at least some credentials we need. So we discourage to apply the website address, but sometimes we have no option. We have to use the website. There's no problem, you can use, but in that case, you must mention the date of browsing. You must mention the date of browsing. When did you browse that on? Because some of the websites, the dynamic website, is always changing the date. And Google or anywhere you are searching the papers, they don't take the responsibility. So we suggest that discourage to use the website address. Even if you use it, you must use the date of browsing. Do you remember that abstract? What we said earlier, that end of the discussion of our research publication outline, that will come to the abstract. This is abstract. You know, I always mentioned, usually I deliver this lecture anywhere. I think Professor also remember that in Chiang Mai University, that day, I also delivered a similar type of lecture. So we always mention that abstract is the glamour. It's the glamour of the paper. The glamour of the paper. When people look at the paper, they'll check the abstract at first. If they are feeling interest, they'll go to inside. If they don't feel the interest, drop it. And that is very normal. So that's why he said that this is a glamour. So now come to the point of how you could express your glamour. It depends on you. There is basic information you have to highlight, that what is the rational, then what is the objective, basic, your main objectives. No need to separate, but you have to mention there in one paragraph, two paragraph. Check the number of words that the journal or conference they're allowing. For the PhD, it is the abstract, means that PhD abstract, so it is on one page usually, but you have to check the spacing as well. And then you have to mention what type of study you are doing, what type of data you are using, and definitely your word style, means academic writing style. So this kind of word, like when you are using that represent, demonstrate, illustrate, depict, highlight, that is something different. We can, with the good sound, we understand that the academic writing is very strong. And it happens anywhere that due to the academic writing, the paper rejected. Because sometimes they understand this is not the academic language is not very strong, so they don't want to accept the paper. And then you have to mention the sampling procedure if you have, as well as you have to mention that number of respondents, if the number of respondents is a very good number. And you know that if your number of respondents is a very small number, no need to highlight here. You can highlight in the inside. In that case, you have to also mention about the reason why you are taking the low number of respondents. It means we need some logical explanation about your number of respondents. And definitely you have to mention statistical tools. If you have statistical tools, you have to mention. I don't need to mention specifically software name, just mention the statistical tools you're using. And definitely you have to mention your main findings, and then you have to mention the contribution of your research work, novelties of your research work you have to mention there. And definitely we prefer that when you highlight the contribution, it should be towards the organization or towards the research area. Anyhow, you have to find out the contribution you have to mention here. And finally, definitely you have to mention the keywords. You know, it's very interesting that what is the significance of the keywords. It is the way that how you are searching the paper. Today you are writing the supply chain. So if you use a keyword in your paper, that means your paper will be there. You are using the keyword, suppose that logistics. So if you have this word, then your paper will come out. So you have to take care that these issues when you use the keywords, what type of keywords you should use. So that is the more or less the structure of the abstract.
I think here is a good example for the main adjective. Okay, the verb, you should learn it. This study represents, demonstrates, demonstrates, encompasses, depicts, highlights. These are all good terms. Actually, in the international journal paper, you can usually see this kind of statements
It will make your paper more viable. Okay, that's my suggestion first. Second, is it okay? Back to a reference. It's a new trend. When you are try to publish your paper in some journal, you need to cite at least 5 papers from that journal. It's a new trend. So, okay, you already done all the writings, and you are interested in some paper, in some journal, you need to Google and see what papers are published in that journal and link to your papers. If it's related, cite it in your paper. The editors usually are like this behavior. Second, put your advisor's publications as many as possible in your papers. He will be happy. If your advisor is happy, you will graduate earlier, right? If he is not happy, then you don't have a good time. That's rule number 1.
Yeah, you know that we have in this conference, I see in 2019, you have another session of the Meet the Editors on Saturday. I'm keeping the one question for him, not today. I will ask you, because he just now he mentioned that suppose you are using, try to publish one paper in the journal, so you have to use the 5 reference from there. And there is a logic. Why these are one kind of norms, the last few years we notice. There's a logic, we'll ask this question again in that session. Okay, so now we are in the last stage, and then we'll give the floor to the session chair to give the floor to you to ask any query. I think you have lots of query, and you have to prefer the more queries rather than our discussion. Basically, academic writing is strong academic writing is very important. And there is a lot of logical expression. We don't want to discuss the all, but you understand that you have to need some of the rhythm in the paper to, when anybody read the one paragraph and then they will go to the next paragraph, they have to check the logical expression, the sequence. Even I noticed that in many papers, even the one paragraph, one sentence to next sentence, there is no relation. So why they are keeping the one paragraph? So you have to create this this environment in your paper that there's a sequence is a very logical sequence, expression is a very logical expression, and then when you go to the one paragraph to another paragraph, one line to another line, there is some connectivity. So when you read the paper, they understood that from where you are starting and what is your destination, how you could come to the destination, you have to highlight that one. That is, we call it academic writing. You know that we can use a chatting word. We can use a chatting word in the chatting, but not in the academic writing. Suppose you know the U, but it's a Y-O-U, right? We use the guys. The pronunciation you can use it as a verbal English, but academic writing cannot use it. So you have to understand that how you can enhance the academic writing. We do not want to discuss, but this is the characteristics. Basically, we are following these norms of the global academic writing. We have to use the complex word, we use the formal, precision, objective, explicit, accuracy, age, and responsible word. You know, it's very interesting thing is that when you write anything, you have to make sure that it's a very formal and precision mode. If you say last few decades, what is this? Last few decades, come to more specific. And the reviewer will ask the first question, what is this? Suppose one reference, you are collecting the information, they mentioned that the last decade. But you are using that one after 10 years. Again, you are mentioning the last decade. So it should not be like this. So you have to come to the more specific. More specific. And then you have to match the highlight, objective you already mentioned. And then accuracy, you already mentioned, vocabulary is very important in that sense. And academic writing is art, that how you could write the paper. You know that take the responsibility. When you use any contents, any information, you have to use the references. So that means you are taking the responsibility. You are using some of the reference from the others, but you are not taking the responsibility. It shouldn't be fair. So you have to make sure the responsibility you should take. And you could not use the like I. You can use it. You cannot use the, even we discussed to use the we. It will be the authors, the researchers, because you're the investigator. And we prefer the passive voice rather than active voice. And I mentioned earlier the one term, the paraphrasing. So make sure that you have to do the paraphrasing. So when you do the paraphrasing, it will be changed, modified. It's part of the academic writing. In order to academic writing, we always mention that it's better that you have to read the more papers, quality papers, check their way of writing style. But what you said that the logical expression, you should give the logical expression there. There is some sequence will be there, so the rhythm will be there. And so anybody read and they can understand how the flow is going in the paper.
Usually, yeah, we don't know how good or how bad our English it is. So when you write it, the journal paper, you just write it, right? But for the first time, when you write a journal paper, I strongly suggest you spend some money to have someone whose English is good enough to collect your spelling and also grammar and the way that you express. After he do everything for your paper, you will recognize, oh, my goodness, my English is so poor or so good. Then you will know in future you need someone to help you in academic writing or not. Otherwise, usually you don't know. And when you submit a paper to the journal, usually you will get a response that says that, please ask some native English speaker collect your English. Then you will be upset, okay? Because you spend so many hours to write a paper, but the reviewer says they don't understand the meaning of here and there, so it's quite upset. But first time, spend some money, you will get a feeling, then you will know, okay, in future, what you should do, okay?
I'd like to add the another one with Professor Lee. When I was in the University of Malaysia, once a day I had a chat with the dean. One of the PhD scholar, she did the revision, and then the problem is that what is Professor mentioned, the grammatical problem, and then she decided she'd like to give to the professional proofreader. And finally, when she returned that one and to the professor, the dean, she was surprised. There is no grammatical mistake, but only technical terms will be changed. So this is very another issue. If you do use a technical term, sometimes it could be changed. You're using the term the scheduling. You're using the term the job shop. It's the operation management term. So you have to understand that sometimes some of the proofreaders, they could understand. So it is in addition to the Professor Lee, we just request you that after doing the proofread, you have to ensure that your technical terms and the logical expression could not change. And could not be changed in that sense because it could be changed, there is a possibility. So you have to check it, this, double check that one. Okay, this is the one of my book I published, the Research Methodology, Contemporary Practices. Okay, so now go back to our first, do you remember that when we started this one today, we mentioned that PhD dissertation. This is basically our outline of the PhD dissertation. Can you give the presentation mode, please? Presentation mode. So what we said that there is a few chapters here. So this is the first one that chapter 1, journalists to the study or interaction of the study. And under this one, if you do the PhD dissertation, you have to use all subsection. Because if you write the paper, it's only a few pages, or you said 5 pages. If you do the journal, it's a maximum 8 to 10 pages. But if you do the PhD dissertation, you have to use this one, the introduction to the study, its objective, statement of problems, scope of research, limitation of the research, signing of the study, definition of terms. You know that research objective, statement of problems, scope of research, and then hypothesis, these 4 are correlated. Correlated. So you have to understand, if you have the 4 research questions, then there should be the 4 hypotheses, main hypotheses. There should be the 4 objectives. There's a correlationship. That could be the sub-hypothesis, that's another issue, but there's some relationship. And we notice that some of the PhD dissertation, when you receive the PhD dissertation in various countries, there is no sequence of that one, because you are asking the question, it's a question, it's your question, right? So your objective is based on that one. Your hypothesis is also based on that one. So there should be the relationship. So you have to check this one very carefully, that when you write the chapter 1, that there is some relationship. You are not highlighting the one is subsection is okay, but if you highlight, then you have to make sure that there is some sequence. Chapter 2, literature review, we already mentioned theory, related review literature, previous study, we already mentioned our construction of the paper. And chapter 3 is a framework, we already mentioned theoretical framework, conceptual framework is hypothesis, operation of the variables. Basically, when you write the PhD dissertation, you must use this one. And because there is some of the score for this one, that we like to confirm whether you have the conceptual framework. But before that, you like to confirm when you are designing the conceptual framework, how about your theoretical frameworks? Means what is your base from where you are coming this conceptual model? It's not like that if you say that we developed this model within one night, we got this paper the first time, there is no other research earlier, no. We need some evidence, not direct evidence, maybe indirect evidence, but we need some of the theoretical framework. So that could be highlighted there. And chapter 4 is a methodology. I think we remember that. We mentioned it's a very important part of the research methodology, method of research use, response sampling procedure, research science instrument, you have to mention. You know, research instrument means survey questionnaire. It's very important. How you are designing the questionnaire. And I always mention, especially PhD scholars, that when you design the questionnaire, you have to make sure that you are not designing the questionnaire for this time. Maybe after 1 year, you decided that we have to extend the research. Again, you cannot do the survey. So when you design the questionnaire, you have to make sure that there is a possibility to extend the research. So when you write the question paper, it should be the very broader scale of the scope of the research survey questionnaire. And pretest is important if you do the PhD. In pretest, it could be the expert. If you take the expert opinion, then in the pretest, that could be better. That the pretest, we assume that is the preliminary test, so you can highlight in your research, PhD research. Collection data, statistical treatment of data, we already mentioned. I think you have an idea. Chapter 5, presentation of data, data analysis part. Basically here, you have to measure discrete analysis if you have, and then the hypothesis testing. And you just remember one issue is that if you have a hypothesis, then hypothesis testing is required. If you don't have the hypothesis, no need to mention that one. So there is some relationship with the hypothesis.
Okay, there are 6 chapters that you need to write, right, to become your dissertation. One simple question is that you should start to write from which chapter. Usually, PhD students, if you don't have any experiments, you will say, of course, from chapter 1, right? But it's useless because you waste your time. The main reason is that you don't know what's the outcome, then how can you write down chapter 1 content? So you should start from chapter 4. Is okay? Come back. Chapter 4 explains the sampling, questionnaire, and how you collect data, because this is the way that you generate your research outcome. So you should start to write from chapter 4. And then next chapter is chapter 5. Because chapter 5 will show the results. After you write the chapter 4 and the 5, then you will have confidence. You know what's the scope and what's going on of your research. Then you will have a confidence, come back to chapter 1. At the same time, you will deliver it to your advisor. This is your chapter 3 and chapter 4. Usually, your advisor will take time to go through your research outcome. So it will be good time for you to write the chapter 2. Chapter 2 is a reference. You already collect so many papers that you already read. So now it's time to write it. So don't write it, start from chapter 2, because you don't know what's the outcome. So how can you cite the papers in the right way? You don't know. So unless chapter 4 and 5 are done, then come back to chapter 2. And at the same time, when you finish chapter 2, your advisor should already go through your chapter 4 and 5. So when he returns to you, then it's time for you to give him chapter 2. And at the same time, you will have chance to write your chapter 1 and also the conclusion, etc. So after your advisor return your chapter 2, so you can give him the rest of the chapters. Then your advisor should like you very much because you do it very smooth, very logical, okay? And the way that you write is the way that you are doing, okay? That's the process of doing research based on my experiments. If you go through chapter 1, 2, 3, step one, chapter by chapter in chapter 1, 2, 3 ways, actually you don't know what conclusion that you can get. So you have to rewrite it again, and usually you would waste your time. Okay, that's my experiments.
You know that when you submit the PhD proposal, basically you have to highlight the introduction, a literature review, in methodology, little bit, which is you can use, you just mentioned, but you have to mention that the work schedule, you have to use that, suppose Microsoft project, that how you can last next 3 years, how you could do the PhD works, data collection, other something. And finally, the expected outcomes, the proposal. You already noticed that in PhD proposal, you have to mention introduction, literature review. Unfortunately, when you could finish your PhD, that introduction, that literature review will be changed. And that's why the professor mentioned that you should not give the more concentration on that one. You have to start from there. Even you don't have enough idea what is you're going to do, what is the outcomes, you don't know. So you have to start from there, what the professor said. And then chapter 6, basically the summary, conclusion, recommendation. You understand, basically here you have to mention the findings, you have to mention the recommendation. If you have a model, then definitely you have a recommendation, how they could apply. The implication of the model you can mention here. For the study you can mention here. And if you have a contribution and nobody you like to highlight, you can highlight here. This is chapter 6. And the bibliography, you have the idea of the bibliography, how you could write this one. Appendix, usually you can use the questionnaire. And then if you do the pretest based on the expert's opinion, you can use that expert biography, demography of the expert, demography in the appendix B, you can apply. If you like to add some of the statistical tools, which is not the main discussion, is an additional discussion, you can use the appendix. Appendix is extra part, so no problem. Even when you use the similarity index, we can exclude the appendix. So it is not the matter that what are you using. So in order to use the software, Turnitin software or iAuthenticator software, no need to apply the appendix. This is more or less our PhD dissertation format. So it is not necessary to use all subsection, but it is a little bit norms that to use it. So it depends on you and your supervisor. And go back to our earlier thinking that PhD depends on PhD supervisor and as well as the student. And quality also depends on the PhD supervisor as well as the student. 70% depends on the PhD supervisor and 30% depends on the PhD student. Because supervisor, he knows how they create the good super PhD. He knows how can he create the good PhD holder. So he knows better than others. Okay. So unfortunately, if you have the good supervisor, it's good. But if you have a not good supervisor, the life is hell, and you can recognize, you can realize after they finish the PhD.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee and Dr. Habib. What I'll do is I need to do something as a session chair. And typically there's a good summary. So I think there were some very, very valuable lessons embedded in today's excellent talk. So I'm just very quickly, in a minute or two, going to summarize a few of the points that I found very salient. And then we'll open it up for some discussion. So I think Dr. Mamoun provided a very nice overview of almost the entire life cycle of the PhD program with, this one died. All right, so beginning with, you know, I used to work in a television station. All right, so beginning with the proposal itself, and then of course, paper writing, which is a lifetime commitment for those who go for a PhD. In the stage-by-stage discussion, several very interesting practice-based tips came up from the discussions of both Dr. Habib and Dr. Lee. So I agree fully, newspapers are a wonderful place to start. And not only newspapers, but you can read The Economist, you can read several others like Fortune or Time, and then you'll be able to get some great ideas which are arguably very relevant. Looking at the networks of existing researchers, tracing papers. One thing I was sharing over at tea break, the issue of memorizing resources. It's actually a very, very useful approach. If you are a PhD trained scholar, then it is important for you to have some expertise in a particular area. And part of that is recognizing that you yourself have to be an important repository of important seminal pieces in that area. Starting with a journal paper and then a conference paper, so not treating it differently really, you risk the chance of being scooped, essentially. Someone else who's a better researcher than you. Very interesting discussion on quality journals and speed and what's important nowadays. And then there's a significant discussion on methodology, and then some practical advice such as actually spending money for editing. I will say that there are some important takeaways. Number one, I would say, is of course purpose. I think doctoral students, as well as those considering a PhD, must really consider why it is that they're pursuing a PhD, because it will help them to engage in the kind of investment that's necessary, of resources, of time. You know, you spend 3 to 5 years on a program, you really better know what it is that you're wanting, and you should know the purpose of doing that. And there, a lot of things emerge, such as the difference between your forte and your interest. You may be very interested in something, it may actually even excite you, but you may not have what it takes to excel in that area. One of the things that I have done over the past couple of years is mentored students and, faculty colleagues so that they can go on to good PhD programs. So I can contrast 2 colleagues, one of them a graduate of a great university in Bangladesh, and then went and got a master's from an average university overseas. And this individual had tremendous potential, tremendous potential. Long story short, number one, today he's pursuing his PhD in an Ivy League university in America. Fully funded, as all PhD programs are in America, but in an Ivy League program, in a very, very difficult discipline, extremely difficult discipline. Now, how did that become possible? He didn't have a great GPA. He didn't go to an Ivy League school for his master's, but it was possible for him to go to an Ivy League program and pursue a PhD there. But I can also tell you that before he went, I had advised him to not go for it, because he went for a PhD in economics in an Ivy League school because he saw that he was getting better and better and better. And I told him to go for a PhD in marketing. I said, you will do better as a marketing professor, you will earn more, and everything would be great. Today, as part of my mentoring, I listen to him over WhatsApp once a month complain about the wrong choice that he had made. Again, it is about forte and the trade-off with interest. You may be interested in something. He was very tickled by economics. He's a very passionate economist by now. He'd never studied economics. He did a BBA and an MBA. But then he's found that he was really good. But he's realizing that from a practical perspective, it's probably better if he had pursued a PhD in marketing. So I think the sooner you realize these things, the better it is. Another issue, I think, has to do with positioning. So a lot of the discussions today took place. It has to do with existing literature and why it is that you're doing what you're doing. And it's extremely important, in my opinion, that you position your study, for which you really need to understand what it is that existing papers offer, what other researchers are doing, and even the importance of what it is that you are trying to do. And that will help to tame you in almost all of the areas. So Dr. Habib's presentation is clearly latent variable heavy. For my colleague who's doing mergers and acquisitions, probably completely irrelevant. For those who are doing mainstream supply chain management research with modeling, probably none of it. I learned two things which are different from what has been discussed here. One of the world's most famous OB scholars told me, always start your paper with the abstract. Now, this is confusing, but she said, always start your paper with the abstract. And this is an individual, if you ever discuss discriminant validity of a construct, then you quote her, for sure. Another faculty member comes and tells me that Babu, never go for survey-based research. And I said, why? And he said, you'll find it harder to publish. So what happens is there's so much out there. This is clearly, not universally true, but for the individuals in their particular areas, this is true. So when you learn how to position your paper, your work, then there are some, I guess the term that Dr. Habib used was norms. So there are certain norms which can help to tame you. So if you are trying to do survey-based research in an area where that's not popular or that doesn't have a lot of acceptability, well, it's a bad combination. So the last thing, what do you do? The more you invest in this, the more you learn about it, and you're in a much better position nowadays to learn about these things than I or Dr. Habib or Dr. Lee ever were. So a colleague of mine at Brack University came to me and said that the best thing he learned from a recent research methodology course was the difference between conceptual framework and theoretical framework. So you know what I did? I decided in my free time, before 10 p.m., let me Google this. And I found 3 scholars saying 3 different things. Most of the American scholars said there's no difference. It depends on how you look at it. Most of the Southeast Asian scholars said, as Dr. Habib presented, one of them is what exists, one of them is what you're trying to prove. And then there's actually a paper in a decent journal that talks about all of these things. So the reason I'm saying that is, if you are going to do a PhD and you're going to waste your time on doing lots of things, you might as well do it right. So you need to understand when it is that you use partial least squares versus covariance-based structural equation modeling, or if you should use structural equation modeling, how to position your research. If you're in an area in finance, if you're not doing econometrics, if you haven't invested in the difficult economics courses, then you're off to a bad start. And then the more you invest, the more you learn. So the hottest thing right now, at least in the US Academy, are experiments. Finance people are doing behavioral finance and they're running experiments. Economists, who traditionally looked at observational studies, as they call it, or secondary data, now they're running RCTs. And there are millions of dollars which are being pumped into it. And so you're better off investing and learning more. And the only way you can do it, in my opinion, is to seek also information from people. So talk to as many people, and that's where these conferences become important. One person you bump into will say surveys are the only way. Another person will say, oh, don't do surveys. You decide based on some additional research. All right, enough babbling on my part. I think we can still salvage the workshop title by asking you to ask us questions. So what I'll do is I'll open the floor for you to ask any kind of question. And since this is more of a traditional setting, somewhat in academia, so the only stupid question is the one that you don't ask, because you won't get another opportunity. So let's hear some questions. Is there somebody with a mic going around who can ask the questions? Okay, there you go. 10 virtual bonus points for whoever asks the first question. Virtual bonus points. I think between the two of you.
Thank you. So my question is actually, I think I represent some of the participants here. So you have taken notes on our research questions, and some of the young researchers here would love to get their some opinions from you. So if there's any platform that they can have me including, that we could write something to you, maybe a very short paragraph of what our research focuses on, and maybe you could give a feedback and refer them to where they can pursue.
Yeah, that's good advice, right? Yeah, I think yeah, what you are saying is good, excellent, yeah, and yeah, why not use an email? Okay, so maybe later we share. I give you my name card. Okay, all information is there. So actually, I'd like to know each of you, because I feel that you are eager to know something. Yeah, very surprised me. In the beginning, I don't know what's the outcome or what's the process of this morning, and your dean says that usually people wake up late and full of energy at night. I say, yes, that's usually the case, but the people who come to this workshop should be totally different. Your life want to have some highlights. That's my feeling, and I can feel that, okay? Each of you, the eyes are open, and always listen carefully. And I can see the smile from your face, or your disagree maybe, okay? But I think it's good. And I think maybe we can chat more when we have during the lunchtime, okay?
If you have any kind of query to Professor Lee, just send to him email. Or if you need any kind of follow-up, you just mention to me. I'll do the follow-up with him. Even yesterday, he talked to about our student, especially those receiving him in the airport, Safwan and another one. Professor mentioned he's surprised. Then they said it was midnight, after midnight, but they were very active. I said, the conference secretariat, the conference people, organizing committee, they're working at night, so no problem. This is our work style. And we are very energetic, Bangladeshi people. But unfortunately, we couldn't get the good privilege, good opportunity. That's why we couldn't get the success as well. Next question, please.
That's right. This is one of the PhD lessons. You write a nice paper, you send it, and then the response you get is really not fair. With a lot of things working as part of it, an editor receives it from a particular, can you hear me? Yeah. So an editor receives it from a particular, you forget to put in the 5. And that's not fair at all. The editor receives it from a particular individual, right? And these things actually do matter. The network matters, your co-authors matter. I had organized a workshop where we had professors from Australia come in and tell us about the challenges they face as they try to hit the top journals, which are mostly edited in the US. And it was very interesting. I mean, there were extremely honest. So one of them said that we almost try to ambush because the spaces in journals are quite limited in the top few, in the FT50, which means that, you know, if you can choose, then you will choose, because your journal does better, ultimately, if there is a paper from Harvard. It's nice if a Harvard professor is publishing in your journal. So these things, unfortunately, come into play. And that's why, Ms. Maureen, you only got 10 bonus points, even though you were the first mover. Yeah. So, second
question. Thank you very much. It's pretty interesting and nice presentation, well presented as well. Now, I've got a question from a bit contrasting the latest trends of the way things are going for the PhD and the way we used to hear from our very, very senior professors over there when they used to do research on pure topics such as, let's say, pure physics, which still are going on, where innovation was pretty much one of the key factors that used to drive that they will come up with something that was never done before. So how much these methodological things has changed, or kind of, let's say nowadays most things are multidisciplinary, where there is a hybrid all the time, mixing this one with that one, and then coming up with trying to find something edgy over there, or adding up to something there. So how much it has changed, let's say, over the period of time when there were pure innovation was the driving factor, nowadays where there is kind of adding things here and there. How does it make a difference? I mean, if you could highlight on that a bit.
So that's actually a very good question, because you have the whole purpose of a PhD is to learn how to create knowledge, and you want substantial novelty, or at least definitely some novelty. Now, regarding the approach, I'll mention two things. PhDs actually have expiry dates. This is, you know, nobody will strip you of your title, the PhD, the doctor, or your initials that come after it. But according to the US Academy, for you to be a current person, you need to have at least a minimum of number of publications within a 5-year window. So it's fundamentally, knowledge creation continues to be important. So it's not simply a certificate you get and it doesn't endure. Regarding the methodology, Dr. Habib hinted at it. So essentially, it's changing because of computers. And you can see how computers are changing. So contribution 25 years ago used to be in hand-collected data and then the painstaking process of analyzing. A lot of that has become automated and computers have become very, very powerful. Structural equation modeling, you really don't have to know a lot about multivariate, which is very sad, and you can still run it. Of course, it'll be difficult for you to hit the top journals. The top journals still only require about 1 paragraph of what you have probably spent 3-4 months doing. Just 1 paragraph. Even the table, they'll push it, not in regression-based, but definitely in structural equation modeling, the tables, they'll push it into the appendix. So on the one hand, the methodology is evolving really fast, and you can actually date a paper based on the methodology and the approach. Which, again, the reason I kind of jumped to answer this is positioning has become important. So the idea is that you have professors all around the world, you know, at schools like, say, Harvard, or in schools like in Taiwan, where these faculty members are working on very, very compelling things. And then it is up to you to understand where it fits in. If you use a uniform lens to judge all kinds of research, then it is off. And let's admit it. I mean, you have thousands of journals. You have, hence, hundreds of thousands of papers. Not all of them are going to be high impact. But then, you know, it's still important. I think. Thank you.
You know that already Professor mentioned that issue. There is a few norms, what I noticed, that the professor, those who did the PhD, like 20 years, 25 years, their ideology, and in fact, those who did their PhD last 10 years, their ideology is different. And their work of function also different. Suppose I just give a few examples that it is a very common that US culture that is all kind of norms there. Within 5 years PhD, if you finish your PhD, after 5 years, your PhD research is obsolete, means old. So they are looking always that fresh PhD holder, that is new innovation, new creativity. But on the other hand, our subcontinent culture is opposite. Any professor 30 years before they did their PhD, still his innovation is a very high quality innovation in our country. But it should be changed. So it's a mindset. And this impact you can also see the supervision process. Definitely the young professor, they emphasize the innovation, more creativity. Even when I supervise my PhD student, I always mention that you should challenge me. What I said, you never think that absolutely right. You have to challenge me. And that is a PhD. This is your PhD. So I can give you a suggestion, but you have to critique my suggestion and then come to the new findings. But this kind of nature you cannot get like everywhere. So there is a difference, that generation gap.
Compared to the past, I think the innovation comes from two angles. One is from domain knowledge. You should be good in some specific area. For example, my specific in some very niche area is called the agricultural product auction. I do over 100 research projects from our government to determine the initial wholesale price for agricultural products in terms of flour, vegetable, fruit, and the pig. So I do many things in that area. Few people knows me until one day when I go to Japan. I attend one conference. There is one professor, very big professor. I don't know him. He come from a very north Japan city and fly to the conference. And he said to me, he focused me already over 3 years. So we have a very deep talk. In the end, I invite him to come to Taiwan. So that's one of the examples. You need to have very niche domain knowledge. It will help you to do the research, to have the innovation. The other way is from a methodology. You have a very good, handy methodology you are very good at. It's good because in the whole world you can find that kind of a conference or journals. And also when some new research questions come out, you can apply your methodology immediately. Then just 1 or 2 months later, you can generate papers. It's not so hard. Let me give you one small example. Your advisor, he's good at supply chain. But if you Google the whole world, now the new term is called ecosystem. If you study what is the ecosystem idea come from, actually it's from supply chain. And you have a background of the supply chain, then for you it's easy. Just add some new elements, it becomes ecosystem. Then you will have papers. So that's how the innovation comes. So basically you need to have some infrastructure in terms of domain knowledge and the methodologies. And it will help you to grow your own kingdom in your research. And someday someone all over the world will know you and come to you and invite you to go here and there. That's interesting to share with you.
Next question, please.
Whoever takes the next question gets a free meal.
Sir, it's provoking everybody to ask the question. Any observations?
Thank you very much. Nicely presented by you, both of you, in front of audience. We are enjoying your presentation in the different aspects to highlight the research paper. In our country, in fact, before the starting of activities of the PhD program, a PhD fellow is entitled to submit the proposal for getting the admission in our country. But is it possible to write the PhD proposal without performing any activities under the guidance of the scholastic guidance of the supervisor? That is why a PhD fellow is not entitled to do each and every angles to follow the all sorts of activities as well as presented by you in the PhD proposal. But this is nicely presented by you, that is former program. It was started before, back, many days ago. But in our country, or that in the global perspective, we are in digitalized program. When I was doing my PhD, I was searching the matter in the different books from the different libraries, and the different universities. But in fact, nowadays, if PhD fellow is entitled to get anything more from Google, YouTube, and another subject point of view. But is there any change? I think that should be changed to modify, to get the innovation, to present your idea will be presented by the PhD fellow by innovative idea to contribute. That will be contribution, will be presented by the PhD fellow nowadays. That is, what is our suggestion? What is your opinion? In what process we can get, we are getting so many opportunities are provided by the digitalized program. That is we are getting easily at my residence, we are getting the different data, information. But is there any change? But I think that should be changed, our innovative idea in the format. The number of 6 chapters already been located by you. This is not mandatory, as I remember. It depends on the suggestion, it depends on the audience, it depends on the perspective point of view of the supervisor, who will guide on the basis of the activities, on the basis of the volume of paper, on the basis of that can be changed, as I remember. Is there any option and mandatory to complete the PhD thesis in this way? That is my question. You will try. This is my observation only, not my question. Thank you very much. Thank you, audience.
But more or less what sir mentioned, that our ultimate goal is the findings, outcome, contribution. And that is the same 30 years before and now also same. But the whole methodology could be changed due to the innovation, due to the digital upgradation. But the same system is that, in fact, the previous one. But mindset is a factor, that how we are accepting the innovation from our student. Because there is some, I notice, even of my colleagues, I notice, and due to the PhD supervision, sometimes they do not want to pay the attention to the student's opinion, PhD scholar opinion. Rather than their own opinion, they try to give the highest priority. So that is the mindset what I mentioned earlier. It could be any kind of people, they can change their mindset. That's good for the people.
There is an old saying says, don't work hard, but work smart. It means there is always a shortcut to do something. For PhD degree, the same thing, okay? So how to write a good proposal? For me, it's easy, because in Taiwan, we don't know what's halal food, halal everything. But in Asia, especially Taiwan, Japan, and Korea, we are always talking about smart food. But you cannot get an idea of the smart food and put a halal smart food. Then it will be your piece of work, right? But for us, we don't know how to get in because we don't know how to get a halal certificate, something. So if you focus on region, okay, for example, in Bangladesh, this is not a good topic. But if you think about international, this will be a good topic because in the whole world, there are so many people who don't know halal products or halal system. So it's your niche, okay? So actually, for me, the shortcut to get a PhD is think wide and work smart and write very sweet and precise journal papers. And it should be easy to get a PhD. Good luck to everyone.
Thank you, sir, for the session, and thanks to the session speakers. So the lunch is served. We would request all of you to have your lunch. And that would be the end of today's session. Tomorrow we will be starting at 9 o'clock over here in the ballroom. Thank you.